Order the Board of Supervisors meeting for Tuesday, May 7th. If we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and we will go to the manager for announcements.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to members of the board, staff, and the public for joining us this evening for the May 7th Board of Supervisors regular meeting. This meeting has been properly advertised in accordance with the Pennsylvania Sunshine Act as a hybrid meeting with the option to attend virtually and in person here in the main meeting room. If you are in attendance virtually using the WebEx video conference platform and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please state your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on when the chairwoman calls on you. If you are attending in person with us in the main meeting room and wish to speak on behalf of an agenda item, please address the board at the podium and state your name, municipality of residence, and the topic you wish to speak on. Prior to commencing the meeting, I have a few short procedural items to cover. First, members of the public attending using the WebEx platform are asked to remain muted during the meeting to prevent any ambient noise from disrupting the meeting. If a member of the public is acknowledged by the chair, they may unmute their microphone for their question or comment. Secondly, board members are asked to indicate their name when motioning or seconding a motion so that the minutes may accurately reflect the action taken. Finally, a roll call of the Board of Supervisors will now be taken to ensure that all members can hear and interact using the WebEx meeting platform. Please indicate that you are here when your name is called. Chair Strickland?
Here.
Ms. Stevens?
Here.
Mr. Thompson?
Here.
Mr. Patterson?
Here.
Mr. Heller?
Here.
Thank you. Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. And I'll also announce at this time that we've had executive sessions on April 26th, May 3rd, and May 6th on personnel matters. And we will move to proclamations. We have 3 proclamations tonight, and we'll be moving through those 3. When we're done with those, we'll be taking just a brief 5-minute recess to take some photos with our guests. So just so everybody is aware of that. And we will move to the first proclamation. And this is a proclamation of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, to recognize May 19th to May 25th, 2024 as Public Works Week. Whereas public works infrastructure, facilities, and services are of vital importance to the health, safety, and well-being of the people of this nation, and whereas such facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of public works professionals representing all levels of government who are responsible for and must design, build, operate, and maintain the transportation, water supply, wastewater systems, public buildings, and other facilities essential to serve our citizens. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens and civic leaders of this country to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest in the public works needs and programs of their respective communities, and also to acknowledge the efforts of public works professionals that they make to significantly improve the quality of life for communities large and small. And whereas the American Public Works Association has designated the week of May 19th to 25th to be National Public Works Week and announced the theme of advancing quality of life for all. And now therefore, the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors does hereby designate the week of May 19th through 25th, 2024 as National Public Works Week in Ferguson Township, and urges all township residents to join in recognizing the substantial contributions public works personnel make to protecting our national health, safety, and advancing quality of life for all. Proclaimed this 7th day of May, 2024. And do we have a motion to adopt the proclamation?
This is Patty, so moved.
Is there a second?
This is Matt, second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. I know we'll have some recognition of our public works folks during that week, so that'll be exciting. We will move to our second proclamation here. And this is a proclamation of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania, to recognize May 19th to 25th, 2024 as Emergency Medical Services Week. I wanted to see if there were any guests in the audience on this proclamation who were interested in making some comments. I wasn't sure and wanted to check. I'm not seeing any. So I will go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas emergency medical services is a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas emergency medical services systems consist of first responders, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, emergency medical dispatchers, firefighters, police officers, educators, administrators, pre-hospital nurses, emergency physicians, trained members of the public, and other out-of-hospital medical care providers. And whereas the members of emergency medical services teams, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating an Emergency Medical Services Week. And whereas the theme for Emergency Medical Services Week this year is honoring our past, forging our future. And now therefore the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim the week of May 19th to 21st, 2024 to be Emergency Medical Services Week in Ferguson Township, and encourages all residents to join the township in recognizing pre-hospital and hospital emergency medical service practitioners for the services they provide to the community. Proclaimed the 7th day of May, 2024. Do we have a motion to adopt?
This is Patty, so moved.
Second?
Zumari, second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
I didn't know there was a date. Oh,
Yes, yeah.
okay. It was just a date thing. I wasn't sure about that.
Yeah, because this was on a previous agenda, but it got moved, so the date wasn't changed. So the actual proclamation has today's date. So that's been updated in a more recent version. There was just a date difference
That was
on the
it.
day of the proclamation, but it's
Thank you.
been updated. Yes, thank you. So we're going to move to a proclamation of the Township of Ferguson, Center County, Pennsylvania to recognize May 13th to 17th, 2024 as Mount Nittany Health Week. And I'll invite our guest in the audience to come up to the podium and share any comments. If you could just please give your name and township of residence. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Strickland and members of the Board of Supervisors for Ferguson Township. My name is Kurt Kissinger. I'm the Chief Strategy and System Development Officer with Mount Nittany Health, and I'm also a proud resident of Ferguson Township, so it's good to be home tonight. On behalf of the, oops. Hold on. Are we good? Good to go? Okay, thank you. So as I was saying, on behalf of the 2,400 employees and 220 providers of Mount Nittany Health, I want to thank you and the residents of Ferguson Township for your continued support of Mount Nittany Health and our medical center. We have over a 120-year legacy of having the privilege to serve the health needs of this community. And while we began as an 8-bed infirmary in Victoria and Bellefonte, Pennsylvania, we've evolved into a comprehensive community health system, and we are very proud to still remain an independent, community-governed health system. And I think what motivates us really is our mission statement: healthier people, stronger community. Community is in our mission, and we're very, very privileged every day to wake up to serve the communities here throughout the center region, as well as the residents of Ferguson Township. And I think that commitment is also evidenced in the fact that we are reinvesting more than $500 million in care environments, technology, recruiting physicians, and expanding our clinical programs over the next 5 years. Whether it's our new 300,000 square foot, 10-story patient tower that will be opening up here in a couple weeks, or a couple of years, I should say. I wish it was a couple weeks. Boy, construction never moves that fast, right? Or it's our outpatient tower over in Patton Township, and I'm pleased to see colleagues from Patton Township here tonight. Or our new Express Care that we just announced that will be opening up next week in College Township. And so thank you very much for your consideration of this proclamation. Mount Nittany Health Week is actually celebrated as part of National Hospital Week, celebrated by more than 6,000 hospitals nationwide. And that was started by the United States Congress in 1921 on the occasion of recognizing Florence Nightingale's significant contributions to creating the modern-day nursing profession, which has really transformed patient care in hospitals. So that's how it comes full circle. So this is our way to celebrate and acknowledge and thank the employees at Mount Nittany Medical Center and across the health system for their dedication every day in serving the communities here throughout the Center region. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you so much. Thanks for those comments, and that's a lot of interesting information too, so I appreciate that. And I will go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas Mount Nittany Health is the community's locally governed health system with the mission of healthier people, stronger community, and whereas Mount Nittany Health, with its more than 2,400 employees and 220 providers, has provided more than 120 years of service and outstanding health care to our region. And whereas Mount Nittany Health is a trusted partner in our region's growth and development and has honored this partnership through continual investments in people, programs, technology, and facilities to ensure the community is well served for future generations. And whereas the Mount Nittany Health team brings compassion, expertise, and ongoing commitment to caring for our families, neighbors, and friends. And now therefore, the Ferguson Township Board of Supervisors does hereby proclaim the week of May 13th to 17th, 2024 to be Mount Nittany Health Week and commends the board leadership and entire Mount Nittany Health team for its record of service to the region. Proclaimed the 7th day of May, 2024. Is there a motion to adopt this proclamation?
This is Patty, so moved.
Right.
This is Amari, second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Thank you. Great, thanks so much for joining us and sharing those comments again. Like I said, we'll just take a quick, at the most 5-minute recess right now just to get some photos with our guest and get back into our seats. I've stopped looking at how they turn out. That probably helps in just being very quick about it.
theatrical controls.
Let me get my place here. That was about 1.5 minutes, so if, go ahead. Yeah, we're good. Are we good? Okay, so if staff is ready and CNET is all ready, I will call us back to order. And next item on the agenda is public input. And this is an opportunity for anyone with comments on any item that is not on tonight's agenda already to share them. I am not seeing anything. Okay, so we will move to approval of minutes, and there are 2 sets of minutes this evening. One is April 16th and the other from April 2nd. Any changes or corrections to those?
I think I did 1 second.
I'm sorry, this is Sue Perkins. I wanted to make a public comment. Can I go back? This is my first time, so I was trying to figure out the WebEx.
Sure, we'll finish this item, this approval of the minutes, and then we'll go back to public comment since we're kind of,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
Absolutely.
At least we heard her.
You said April 2nd, right?
Yeah, there's
Okay.
April 2nd, and that was the Board of Supervisors special ABC meeting.
And just one
Appointment.
small amendment, there was the motion was made by myself, not Mr. Heller.
Okay,
And so just that one amendment on that.
okay,
Yep.
thank you. So if we can capture that change, that was in the April 2nd. Okay, thank you. Anything else for those? And if not, I'll take a motion to approve both with that change.
Ms. Omari, so moved.
And this is Patty, I'll second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. Great, thank you. Okay, cross that off, and we'll go back to public input. Thanks for your patience there, and I believe it was Sue Perkins?
Yeah.
Okay,
Perkins.
thank you. If you could just please provide your township of residence for the minutes, and then you have the floor.
I live in Gatesburg and I'm a member of Ferguson Township.
And you may go ahead with your comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My neighbors are Georgia and Kevin Abbey, and we are asking you to consider painting pickleball lines on the basketball court at Fairbrook Park in an effort to open up additional recreation opportunity to township residents when a basketball game is not in session. Our understanding is that the initial master plan for Fairbrook Park included pickleball courts, but the board voted to remove them before final adoption of the overall plan. I can't tell you why. Georgia Abbey recently reached out to James Brogar, who outlined the process for us and suggested that we attend the Parks and Rec Committee meeting, which she and her husband Kevin did on April 11th. Kevin shared with me that Parks and Rec members were either verbally in agreement or went along with the idea without any negative input. He also followed up with Lisa Strickland, who expressed interest in our request. In addition, I'd like to add that no net placement or construction is being requested because portable nets can easily be assembled and disassembled by township residents. And finally, I'd like to add that Kevin and Georgia conducted some distance measures to estimate sound decibel levels from the nearest residence to center court. There are 3 houses on the fringe of the park that are approximately 345, 360, and 400 feet from center court. With that information, Kevin calculated the sound decibels to be in the high 50s or the low 60s. As a point of reference, 60 decibels is normal conversation, and 50 is equivalent to steady rainfall. Therefore, we do not believe that noise would be an issue. So we thank you for your consideration.
Thanks so much for sharing those comments this evening. Was there any other public comments since we've opened it back up? Seeing none, we will move on to, there are no authorities, boards, and commission reports, so we'll move to special reports and acknowledgements. Under the diversity, equity, and inclusionary activities and acknowledgements, this month is Bike Month, as well as National Physical Fitness and Sports Month, Jewish American Heritage Month, Asian American and Pacific Islander Heritage Month, and as noted, Public Service Week is May 5th through May 11th. We had done a proclamation on that earlier. Police Week is May 12th to May 18th. EMS Week is May 19th to 25th. Public Works Week, May 19th to 25th, and Memorial Day is observed this year, Monday, May 27th. We'll move to COG and regional committee reports. First up is the CCMPO report, and Jeremy attended that in my place.
Yes, so I attended that. Just a lot of informational updates. I could take any questions, but a lot of information was in the packet there, and so.
Thank you. All right, questions on CCMPO? No, thank you for attending that.
You're welcome.
And we'll go to Parks and Recreation Governance Committee with Patty.
Great, we had a meeting, it was a brief meeting. We've sort of reached the point now where we're trying to determine that if in fact we keep a COG committee labeled Parks as opposed to Parks Capital, looking for feedback on what we believe the duties of that committee would be. And that's what we need to work on and get some feedback on. I will be meeting with Corey on Thursday to get some information from him as well. So that's about it
Okay.
Parks Governance. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer what I can.
Thanks. Questions for Patty on that? So I guess it sounds like if there were thoughts on that future committee to share them with you.
Exactly.
Or before the next Parks Governance meeting. Okay. So we can all be brainstorming a little bit about what we think the responsibilities should be of that committee. All right. We'll go to Human Resources Committee. Jeremy.
Yes, I attended that one. We did, the only thing I would point out, we looked at some preliminary personnel request. Parks Department's looking for a program specialist again. That would be very beneficial to their programming needs. There is a high amount of interest in the current program offerings, and just having somebody extra in the office could help alleviate that, not just during this nicer time of the year where there is a lot more programs happening with the nice weather, but even in the winter months, because they got to be planning and preparing for more programs. Another temporary part-time staff assistant to help with the transition to the new refuse and recycling contract was another one that we looked at, especially with the new provider. It will be beneficial to have somebody extra that just helps see through that. So, and then looks like CRPA, the planning agency, was looking at bringing in another AmeriCorps position again this year. Nice benefit of an AmeriCorps position is somebody that can commit to a whole year. I remember last year HR, I think it was HR, somebody asked about an intern, and the downside of an intern is they're usually maybe only available for so many months out of a particular year. So the AmeriCorps position would help them as they got a lot of a lot of work to catch up from.
All right. Well, thanks very much. Questions on HR?
I have just a couple.
Yeah,
Do you
please.
have any intel on how it's going with the COG executive director search? Where we are in that process?
I'm wondering if I should defer to the chair of the search committee. We basically, all I have is we've, at least as a contingency, as you saw in general form, brought in Adam Broombaugh with the hopes that we will get that filled permanently later this year.
And I'm happy to share that the recruitment committee will actually be meeting tomorrow and discussing the candidates that will advance to the second interview. And we are also discussing the framework and the process for a final interview that will consist likely of a presentation and a written narrative. And so more information to come, but I think the milestone that we've made is that the screening interviews have been conducted. The recruitment committee will meet this week and discuss which candidates, per recommendation of GovHR, the consultant that's been engaged to facilitate the recruitment process, we will discuss which candidates will be advancing forward for the second round of interviews.
Great, thank you. And then my second question is, since that seems to be going along, is there any motion on a facilities person for COG? I know that was deferred a little bit because of trying to hire the COG executive director, but if you have any
Yeah, I
information on
don't
that.
think I have
if
any
not-
updates on that.
Sorry?
We talked about facilities committee, it's still delayed.
Oh, it's still
Oh,
in
it's still
facilities
delayed.
Not
Okay.
committee.
advertised yet. Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. And just on that note, Jeremy, this list of individuals being kind of teased around or sought after, is this because they're looking to fill, or they need to kind of fill some gaps in delivery, in COG delivery?
My understanding is to fill some gaps, like especially the one with the refuse and recycling, that is probably gonna warrant a lot of staff time in this new year. One thing that Parks had brought up was there's actually a wait list for a lot of programs right now, and really the only way to work through that wait list and capture that potential revenue is really to have someone else within that department to be able to provide the resources necessary to get a lot of those programs off the ground and even go through that wait list. That was one thing that was brought up. They've been advocating for this position for years now, and it just keeps getting deferred. I do recall, I think it was from last year's HR meeting, another downfall if I'm thinking the right position, another downfall is in instances where somebody may be out of the office on a vacation or something. It does tend to create a lot more pressure on other staff just in the day-to-day. And then planning, again, just to fill gaps. So planning has had just a lot of work in general, and even turnover in the last couple of years, and just kind of getting everything leveled out.
Sure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, thanks for that. And then we had the Land Use and Community Infrastructure Committee meeting, which I attended. A lot of information in the agenda, and mostly we talked about the comprehensive plan update, and we had in our planning and zoning training some information about that. So one of the big things we went over was the survey that will go out as part of that. It's a long process, but the survey will be open at some point to the general public, and I think we will expect an update on this, I think at the June 12th, I might have the day wrong, but the special meeting, the Wednesday special meeting from the director at CRPA. So any questions on that? Seeing none. We'll go to Center Region Planning Commission. We'll report at the Planning Commission, and we'll move to Facilities Committee.
So Facilities Committee met this morning. A couple of notes that there was a review of kind of custodial services throughout the COG. And for those that get a chance to read it, fairly eye-opening, kind of how it was disjointed in the way that we were using those services. And thank Mr. Frank, the elder Mr. Frank, for doing that research and understanding. So there's going to be a comprehensive review of what can be done to bring those services together, and maybe it's this facilities administrator that can kind of help with that. But there's some decent savings that may come from that. That's number one. Number two, the other item that was long lead item was regarding the COG has brought on a consultant to look at kind of the overarching facilities for some of the longer term needs, i.e. CRPR has a building out in College Township that they're renting for stuff. And so should there be a kind of more consolidated use of facilities, maybe another facility close that can take care of those needs. So anyway, they brought on a consultant to do that, and we're moving forward with that assessment. So there'll be a report. They didn't have a date, but they're going to move forward with engaging the consultant for that assessment.
Okay, good. All right, questions?
No, I'm looking forward to that report, because that's a good deal to get folks in here from the outside to look at everything across the board, so.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions on facilities? Not seeing anything, so we'll go to staff reports and look to the manager if you had anything you wanted to share.
I do. Thank you, Chair Strickland. So I'd like to point out that our Assistant Township Manager, James Progar, and our GIS Coordinator, Karina Fernandez, recently And of course, other staff members have participated, but really James and Karina both have taken the lead in the development of a new platform that has been created internally by staff for what we're referring to as the Citizens Request Center. So there's a link on our township website for residents to be able to, click, and it's got GIS technology. So if you're at a park, for example, and if you see limbs, hanging over utility lines, for example, you could take a picture, and the GIS, cord option will allow it to just ping where you're located, and it'll submit a request immediately to the department, and a work order will be established. And the great feature here is that at any time you can log on and see where your request is in the process and until it's closed out. So we are launching it as a pilot program, and we're collecting some data to see how it performs to determine an official launch in 2025. So we're really excited, and I really just want to thank staff, all staff, but a special shout out to our assistant manager and our GIS coordinator for the hard work that they've put into this over the last, I think, 4 to 6 months. So well done. And I also want to point out that Ferguson Township was notified yesterday that we were awarded a grant match, a 50% grant match from the Appalachian Regional Commission. So I want to thank Chair Strickland. She introduced me to the CEDACOG coordinator, Betsy Lockwood, and she provided a great deal of guidance in the process of submitting a grant application. And this was all around the time, some of you may recall, the Route 45 Getaways transition from us really hosting and spearheading that initial project and getting it off the ground. Then we transferred over to the borough of Millheim, of course, and they've continued to carry that forward. But we had discussed, what are some other ways that Ferguson Township can really take the lead and economic development, understanding that our character here in Ferguson Township is very different than some of our neighboring municipalities. Ward 1 is very different than Ward 2, Ward 3, and so exploring the Appalachian Regional Commission after Chair Strickland introduced me to Ms. Lockwood, I started thinking a little bit about how could we be a little bit more strategic with an intentional approach to the economic development and understanding too, housing assessment, assessment of the housing market, and understanding about how stormwater can even really fit into economic development. So the option was available to submit what they called an executive summary grant application submission, just for the federal grantor to consider who they would invite back to submit for an official full grant application. So I typed up this vision, which has been provided as an attachment on our webpage. And we were invited to submit a full application, and we just were notified yesterday that we received a 50% match to continue forward with the development of a comprehensive strategic plan for economic development, growth, and innovation at Ferguson Township. So I look forward to really being able to implement that as part of the funding, the grant award. There's funding to bring in a part-time staff position to assist with taking the lead in this project. So I'm just sharing with the board and the community lots of great things to look forward. And other than that, I'm happy to answer questions. I'll also acknowledge that there's an open house event that will take place on June 4th from 5 to 6:30 to provide a review of the Mobility and Pedestrian Improvement Project in Pine Grove Mills. So that is open to the public from 5 to 6:30 June 4th, immediately prior to the Board of Supervisors meeting, which will take place here in the main meeting room. And that information is also available on our webpage, and letters went out to the impacted residents. So with that, I'm happy to answer any additional questions that the board may have.
Thank you. I'll backtrack to the first item, the Click It reporting. That is so exciting to have that online, because that has been kind of a dream project for a little while, and it had a couple of dedicated staff people really concentrating on it. So thank you so much. It's really great. And that that grant that was no small feat to even apply for that. And so I think just again, special thanks to the manager and assistant manager, and the time that was put into that really was it was actually, I don't even know so much about the time, but really the thought and consideration to how to use those funds. So
Right, and I just want to say, while I may have developed that executive summary document for the initial submission, Assistant Township Manager, from that point forward, when it was time to submit the full grant application, really, took a lead role in providing assistance with getting it, submitted. So it was a team effort for sure, with a lot of, staff members really providing support. So we got it.
Thanks.
Good.
And I had one more thing, but I'm going to see if others have questions for the manager. Over there.
+1 on everything you just said. So, yeah, I'm good. Thank you.
Wonderful. And then I just wanted to note that you included in the agenda that's posted online right now, the organizational assessment that had been conducted for the township right after you came on board. And so just wanted to note that you included that there. That's really helpful for us. This was really a deep dive look from a consultant into the organizational structure and systems and personnel, with a lot of really impactful and important recommendations that I know the manager has been working through. And so it may even be great to get an update on that at some point, to see where we're at. So we can follow up on that.
Absolutely, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we will move to new business, and we have a number of items under the consent agenda. Did anyone need to remove anything for discussion?
I will just say my initial interpretation of Cranksgiving was wrong until I read it. And then I went, okay, now I understand what Cranksgiving is. I thought it was something else.
Well, good. I'm glad we're clear. So can I get a motion to adopt or approve the consent agenda?
This is Matt, so moved.
Is there a second?
This is Patty, I'll second.
All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed, say no. All right, thank you. We will move to review of the 2025 Center Region Council of Governments Program Plan and 2025 to 2029 Capital Improvement Plan and Replacement Plan. And we'll go to the manager to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair Strickland. On April 29th, 2024, the Center Region Council of Government General Forum referred the 2025 COG Program Plan, Capital Improvement Plan, and Replacement Plan to the member municipalities for review and comment. Board members have reviewed copies of the draft 2025, or have been provided copies of the program plan and the replacement plan, which is available and provided in the agenda packet, as well as provided on the COG's website. As done in prior years, COG staff has prepared a comment guide to help facilitate and organize the municipal comments on the plan. The comment guide is attached to the agenda, and staff will be taking notes and recording all of the consensus comments discussed by the board. This evening we have with us the COG Finance Director, Kimberly McCullen, and she will be here to present a high-level brief review of the 2025-2029 Capital Improvement and Replacement Plan, and will be available to answer any questions the board may have as part of your discussion.
Thanks. We'll turn it over to Kimberly. Thanks so much for being here tonight, and
Thank you.
you can go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, and township staff. Thank you for this opportunity to receive feedback on our 2025 COG Capital Improvement Plan. And I'm joined this evening. You can see the Executive Director, Eric Nornberg, is online, as is the Parks Director, Christy Owens, and Lisa Reeves-Collins from the library is here with us as well. So if you have specific questions as we proceed, I'm sure they'd be happy. We've been practicing, so I'm sure they'll be happy to answer some of your questions, as will I. Before we go through, I just did a few slides. You've seen most of them, but before I go through that, I'd just like to share with you a few assumptions that we made during the process of preparing the CIP. Some of you that might have seen last year's, this is a different format, which I was hoping would be more transparent and provide a little bit more insight and information, not only into the coming year, which is obviously the most important budget, but the out years, but then also the document itself, which the Finance Committee has seen, also includes a roll forward from 23 and 24, because any expenditure that we're experiencing this year that comes under budget, let's lead with that comes under budget, will provide a net positive effect on the fund balances rolling forward. but it'll also give us insight on things that might need to or be considered for rolling forward at that time. So the document itself, the internal document, is much more robust, and hopefully we'll make more better informed decisions as we go through this year. When we vetted the proposal, the Facilities Committee and the Finance Committee, thank you both for a lot of early information as we went through this process. But just for your information, we did use the general forum's value propositions as a guide as we looked at different things that were a priority to the agency directors. We had very good conversation about how that fit into these principles that have been discussed, and they've become very important guardrails for us in these conversations. On a more financial note, the out years for the municipal shares, I used a consistent factor of 3% over the last few years. That's just been a number that's been applied since we really don't see too far into the future. It just gave us a very consistent approach to look at what the shares could look like once we get past 2025. And also one thing that I wanted to share as I went through this learning curve, there are a number of pages in the CIP that reference debt service, and I have learned that debt service is actually more appropriately represented on the operating budget. So what I'd like to do in the final publication of the CIP is pull some of that out, not remove it entirely from our process, but just put it where it really belongs and make sure that we are not overlapping any debt service in both the CIP and the operating budget. And the specific examples of that, we are carrying just a few more years of debt service for pools, and then we've got the regional parks. So I assure you that those will be accounted for where they belong in the operating budget as we move forward. A few key drivers in this overall plan. Another change that we made this year was in this format, we categorized any asset as whether it is a structure or a vehicle, of what is the nature of the asset, but then also the classification of why it was in the CIP. So we tried to isolate improvement, replacement, and additions. And we found that to be really helpful. And where replacement comes into play, we've got significant replacement in the next couple of years. Fire is replacing apparatus, and that had been backlogged. As you probably know, there have been supply chain issues, particularly with a lot of heavy goods, but there is both a 2025 and a 2026 item in the CIP for replacement of apparatus. Parks equipment, including pools, there's often a great need to focus on safety there in terms of replacing some of what already exists. And the COG building, which you may have some questions about, I'm prepared to answer some of that. Just so you know, the COG building itself is in a lease arrangement that is going to shift in the very near future, but then also the HVAC and the parking lot are called out specifically, and we are working with Mr. Frank, also the senior Mr. Frank, to provide us with some of his historical knowledge of how the infrastructure with the COG building. So those numbers are not firm, they're large. There's an HVAC and a parking lot. They're large. We are still vetting them, and there is a possibility that that number could drop or somehow be pushed forward if we have to mitigate that in the current CIP. So the slide in front of you, this is a deck I'm very happy to share with you. I put this together for the purpose of the CIP tour. This first slide is just an overview of the slides that are in the deck. So if you do end up with a copy of it, you have seen the 7 final slides, but I'd like to show you the first 2. So if you could just advance. So I put together a very rudimentary bar chart because I thought it would be meaningful to see the last 4 years of actual approved CIP budget and then how that stacks up to the 2025, specifically for each municipality. So the blue bar on the very end is what we are looking at for 2025. And for Ferguson, the total, including regional parks, is about $603,978. And that is about a $28,000 increase over 2024, primarily due to fire. Because of the way that the apparatus is spread out over the municipalities. That represents about a 4.86% increase over 2024. And I did include the regional parks in these numbers because those numbers are significant. I know there's a lot of conversation about the parks, particularly Whitehall, which is hopefully coming to open very soon. But I just thought it was appropriate because of the scope of assets that are tied up in that particular area in regional parks. And lastly, as we also thought through this, we tried to apply the logic of one of our values, which is take care of what we have. So we thought a lot about, okay, we've got this replace, improve, add mindset, but we want to be very mindful of repairs and maintenance. And is an asset in a replacement year because really the timer has gone off, or is it because the asset has truly materially been compromised and we need to do something with it? So I think if we pay a little more closer attention and invest in repair and maintenance schedules, we would be able to prolong some of our assets far beyond the warranty. And that's a consideration that we will be looking at as we move forward into the detailed budget. So that's pretty much what I have in terms of that. The other slide that I have that's part of the deck, this is that one. There's been a lot of conversation as I've become more and more familiar with my job that there has been a series of slides like this in the past where the expenditures of the COG, the expense to the municipalities of their municipal shares to the COG, how does that compare to your total expenditures or your tax revenue? What is the baseline that allows this to actually happen? What are the formulas that we're working with? And I've resurrected these slides. I think they're a great tool. I think that there's a series of them. I prepared this one to the best of my ability, and I would love to make sure that the numbers are correct when we roll out the detailed budget, that I'm picking up your correct expenditures, your actual versus maybe your budget, however we want to look at that, going forward so that we're consistent, but then we are also getting a very accurate picture of what the COG represents in terms of your financial statements. So that's all I have. I'd like to thank the Academy. Thank you for your attention and letting me get through that. And I'm happy to stay here if it's easier, if you have questions. While you discuss. It's up to you.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
I guess I'm going to probably turn it over here to Matt Heller, who sits on our finance committee, our representative finance committee. I guess we could start first, just if there's general questions for Kimberly, and then launch into whatever you have before you sit.
I do
We
have
can
a
let you sit.
Thank you.
Hey, Kimber, thank you for that. Help me with my math. I think on one of the charts it shows Ferguson Township's 2024 contribution at 430, roughly K, with the 2025 being 600K. And so maybe I just want to amend the record. As you said, it was only 25,000
Yes.
more. It's $125,000 more.
And
Or unless you have some more. Sorry, go ahead.
I have a great answer. I do. So what I did in this particular version of the CIP, in the numbers that you're seeing, the last year did not bake in the regional parks number. So looking at here where I've got the 21, this would be the bar chart. If you just want to roll back. The numbers aren't represented there. I didn't want it to get unreadable. But in 2024, up to the regional parks investment, it was 427,825. This year, the exact same number is 451,376, which is a difference of 23,551. But when you layer in the regional parks, 2024 is 575,982, and 2025 is 603, which is where I get the $28,000 difference. So up to the the inclusion of regional parks, the numbers are about $24,000 different, and then when you add in regional parks, it jumps up to about a $28,000 difference. So that's the difference. So the 2024 number that is in the budget analysis that you all were looking at possibly is the 427, but if you drop down a block, you'll see the 148, 157.
And just to clarify that we're all using the same language, when you say regional parks, what exactly, are you just talking about the loan for Whitehall and?
No, regional parks is all inclusive of Whitehall, Oak Hall, and Hessfield.
Okay, but you're talking about the loan.
Yes, and right now, the loan for Whitehall, but no, this is all of the investment in the pavilion and the, which hasn't started yet, but all of the infrastructure that went into actually building Whitehall, but then Oak Hall and Hessfield also have capital needs, and they're included in the regional parks. Regional parks on our budget analysis is actually separated, but it's included in the CIP because of the scope of the capital.
Okay, so you're talking about in Whitehall, or in regional parks, Whitehall, Hess, and Oak Hall.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, so let's all look at the same charts together. James, can you go to, what is it, chart number, what chart number are you on right now? Number
Is it in the
6?
in the stack?
So if you go to chart 7 of the, because it's the chart, 8 charts, right? Is that one of 8?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah, if you
yes.
go to 7, the green line,
Is that
top
it? Yeah.
right, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, the green line at the top right, it says 427,825. Can you
Yes.
help me understand, like, the math there when you layer it on something else? I'm not understanding, so I'm just trying to.
No,
clarify
this
that.
chart does not include the regional parks, and that is why you're seeing that 427, 825 in terms of the block that has up to when Whitehall came into play a couple of years ago, only included in the parks family, parks capital, pools, and the nature center. And now there is this very large investment that we've made in regional parks that is being classified as capital investment that is separate, and I don't believe that it should be. So that number is correct, but it does not include the investment that Ferguson made last year separately into the regional parks.
Okay, so then let's go to chart 5 for a minute.
Was that a,
I totally get it. So
Okay,
chart
okay.
5, green line, bottom left, green line at the top, the bottom left number, that's 603,978, correct?
yes,
And you're saying that does include
Yes.
regional parks?
yes.
Okay, so
So-
these charts are not apples to apple. We're talking apples and, well, we're talking different flavors of apple at this point.
We're talking different flavors of apple. Yes,
All right,
they're all,
okay.
they're all apples, but they are, this particular chart is the current CIP, 25 to 29, which includes regional parks. The other slide, which is the historical information, does not. Now,
Thank you.
it's very easy for me to build out the other chart. If you'd like to see that in the final, that's an easy ask.
Can I ask a question?
Sure,
Because
I'll pause for a second.
it's right here with this.
Yeah.
So just looking back at last year's CIP to compare, I just want to make sure we're all speaking about the same thing, because we're now trying to compare as much as we can the different charts. So last year's CIP had regional parks, Fund R15. But you're saying that wasn't included in the chart.
Right, so the chart number 7 was intended to be historically, that's what had been approved up to that point in time, but technically there should be another chart just showing the investments in regional parks over the last few years. I'm still learning my way through this. This is my first CIP, so I wanted to provide something to you so that you could see year over year what this looks like, but with all of the emphasis and all of the expenditure right now into the 3 regional parks, which do not, by the way, have operating budgets. The entire regional park budget lives in the capital space. So it kind of what has been this outlier of something special, but when you look now with the purchase of equipment and lighting and a forthcoming, possibly a pavilion and a parking lot and a restroom, now it's taking on the nature of a capital project that is probably, in my experience, we're going to have to look at the replacement value of a lot of what is going on in those particular parks as well.
Thanks, I'll go back to Amari.
I think one of the solutions that I'm happy to provide would be to try to put charts together that are going to, I think what's missing is the actual expense chart that includes the regional parks. That's the one that I need to do for you.
Thank you so much.
So that was my single question. So thank you for kind of helping my brain there with that 25,000 increase.
Okay.
I'll defer to others on questions specifically for you. That was my only.
Okay.
Thank you.
If I
Yeah,
may,
we'll go
this,
back.
this made my job easy, because that was going to be the first point I brought up, was the 427 compared to the 603. So, Kimberly, thank you for the explanation there. I think, as you're proposing, if we could see some continuity between these two, so that it is apples and apples, and I was actually going to say apples and armadillos, as a person I used to work with used to call it, but I think the continuity would be good, because I think first blush, it looks like they should be the same thing, but then when we peek behind the curtain, they're really not, so. Thank you for that. That was the only feedback I had pertaining to this. I will, of course, well, unless I have more comments.
Yeah, if you want to see if anybody has anything else for Kimberly specifically, and then you can start the whole rundown through, however you want to lead that. I was going to let her sit until we needed her again, so thought we'd get any questions out to her. I don't know if anybody else had anything specific for Kimberly.
No, the only thing I will say is maybe just tune in on Thursday morning, right? Because we're going to be going through the formulas in the Finance Committee to better understand the municipal contributions across the different municipalities, and potentially how they differ in the different directorates within the COG. So I'm looking forward to that conversation as well. Should be a good one. And then I'm happy to go ahead and go through the list whenever.
Yeah.
Kimberly's
Yeah,
comfortable.
you go ahead and.
I do have one more item. I think I had recommended in committee, so this is just an opportunity to get it out here in this space, that we look at our sources. I think typically the sources have been municipalities, and I don't think that's quite fair for the COG to kind of provide this awesomeness to and the municipalities pay for it, and then there's people that come from all over the place to use these facilities, and then it's back to municipalities to pay for it, for that upkeep. So I do think, as part of the sources for capital improvements, there should be some of that revenue, whether it's saying, okay, we're gonna have, $2 tacked on to the non-resident pool fee, or an extra $1 or fee for softball team X that's coming out of Snowshoe or something like that to use Hess Field, because that's gonna go toward replacing that lining equipment. Because right now it's, okay, Town Ferguson, need you to pony up your 30% for that lining equipment, and the other townships would say, and not, some of these other kind of non-residents that are using the equipment. So that's just my general comment writ large that'll say in this space. I've made it before, but you've heard it, so I'll pause there.
There's a slide that I think it's up further.
And while she's pulling that up, I'll just say, if there are comments that we want to suggest we include in the comment response form, go ahead and suggest that, and we can get get a consensus here. I think that's an interesting point to be talking about how, because we capture those differences in costs at the pools, for instance, but and in parks programming, but not everywhere. So I think that's a fair comment to be looking for, continue looking for external sources of funding for some of these things. Yeah.
And if I may, yeah, and to that point, with, we'll say the 26 or 30% as it is for Ferguson Township's contribution, I think it would surprise a lot of people if they walk up to every park and saw a sign on every piece of equipment that says Ferguson Township has 30% of this, a majority stake in every piece of equipment. That would probably be surprising to a lot of people, and they might ask those same questions about what other source of funding should we be looking at from the folks that are actually using the parks, et cetera. So I think this is part of a larger conversation that I'm hoping to have not only this year in the CIP and the budgets, but also in years coming up too.
Yeah. Yep, go ahead, Kimberly.
So I just brought this slide up real quick. The slide that showed the estimated 2025 to 2029, I think it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 11.9 million. And the actual worksheet here, which again, I need to caveat, the debt service doesn't necessarily belong on a capital slide, but the other sources come to about 16 million when you add in the loans and some of the other things that are outlined here at the very bottom. Contributions and donations, grants. I know Lisa's here. Lisa is a very aggressive grant and fundraising person. She's kind of a Jedi there and knows where to try to find that money. Interfund transfers, we don't really have a lot of that. And the grants. And I just want to make a note, I know Christy's online, but for example, when you go through this, like for example, the boardwalk, she's trying to be very creative with mitigating some of that loan with either a capital campaign or some sort of donor campaign. So we are also trying to be more creative in where to find that money. So we are aware, that it is, we cannot entirely rely on the municipalities to fund this. And then how do we just get better at turning some of those rocks over and finding some of that money?
Thank you. And to that point, this is just regional facilities we're talking about. We're not even talking about our own municipal parks. That's a whole separate budget that we fund through resident taxpayer dollars. So was that it on that? Should we let Kimberly sit down and thank you so much.
I won't go far.
Don't go far.
Yeah.
But we can start to work through the comment guide. And again, Matt, you
so I have spent some time with the CIP, and what I just want to encourage, of course, is other supervisors to please, as we go through this, if there's stuff that you see that we want to talk about, let's flag it. Let's get it on the table for conversation to take it back, because I believe the time that these are due is 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, even though they follow on after this. I know there are more road shows and everything coming up, but I think that was the timeline that was in our finance meeting last time. I was actually going to start on page 13 of the CIP, so and just start looking at different things that kind of jumped out to me. Some of these I think folks have heard here, both in this forum at the supervisors, but also in the finance committee as well, so they should seem familiar. And if everyone's good, I'll just jump on in. Mm-hmm. One of the items was the general form AV for a total of $93,000 over the course of the years. So between 25 and 29, spending that $93,000. I am again curious to know, that's just a lot of money for AV. If something's broken, I get it. But if not, I just see that as being a rather significant investment over the time. I wouldn't imagine that would fall into a building improvement either, potentially with the owner of the building. There are other items here like the parking lot that we'll get to that might be beneficial. But again, that's a $93,000 expenditure over the 5 years that I don't know is necessary or not. So
I'd agree with that comment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. The other one, the boilers. Now this one I would hope that this is in the you know, the owner of the building is aware of this one, but if the boiler is going to be replaced as well for significant amount, what is it? To heating and cooling, about $30,000. I would hope that, again, the owner of the building would be contributing to that or taking that on their own. And that was coming up in fiscal year 2028.
We're the owners of the building.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought there was a lease agreement that I hear, though. Who,
It's us,
COG leases it.
but COG leases it from?
the municipalities.
Eric Nordberg has the same.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
Eric,
we're-
I think Eric's gonna
Yeah,
explain it.
saving everybody money then.
Eric, did you want to chime in on that? And we'll go to-
Sure, I'd be happy to spend any time talking about the lease for the building, but the municipalities all own the building right now, and the lease goes through May or June of 2028, I believe, at which point the building becomes owned by the COG. But as we like to say, the COG is us, so we own it together. The lease payments are approximately 50% funded by the Center Region Code Administration because the code occupies about half the building, and so we've got that enterprise fund covering approximately 50% of the debt service rent payments back to the municipalities on that. And in terms of the question about the AV equipment potential replacement, one of the things we try to do with the equipment and other items such as this throughout the 5-year plan is identify when we might need to replace things and make sure they're identified in the approximate order. When would a warranty run out? What is the expected lifespan? But if we're able to get another year or two out of it, that doesn't mean we're going to replace it right then. It means we're programming it out in the future so that there's no surprise gotcha kind of thing when something comes up and needs to be replaced unexpectedly. So what Scott and the AV vendor did was identify when we might be looking at having to replace a projector or another component, but if we get to that point in maybe a few months before, a year before, we don't have to replace it if it's not burning out. Some of you who are on the Board of Supervisors a couple of years ago remembers when one of the projectors in the COG General Forum room was shining in pink and magenta because it was wearing out and we had to get that replaced. This is an attempt to identify, for example, when things might need to be replaced and be proactive in identifying that several years out. And as things move forward, we'll either push it out a year if it's good and don't need to replace it, or we'll adjust it as accordingly. But not a guarantee that we're going to have to replace each of those things on that schedule.
Thanks, Eric.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate the explanations there. And again, I think it's important, not in the feedback that we're having here tonight, to focus on those things that at least would bring COG representation, your focus to these items as we go forward as well. Meaning, this is where I'm going to be focusing in the details on items that are of significant expense in the upcoming years, to at least alert folks to maybe question whether or not those expenditures are necessary before they are put into a CIP or before they put into a budget. So I look at the CIP as that worst case scenario. We're planning for warranties to expire. We're doing all these other things. And I expect the budgets, of course, to come in under that. But again, I think we have an opportunity here to lay the road out before us and make any adjustments early on. So again, back to the boiler being another item that I would hope would last more than the couple years that, what was it? Yeah, the 10 years that it was slated for use. That seems abnormally low. Okay, that's what I had.
I think that's a good comment to include about the, yeah.
So 10 years was versus on that one.
I'm sorry, could you repeat that comment so I can?
Sure, the boiler, it looks like it would be replaced at about the 10-year mark in 2028.
Thank you.
I know some boilers that have gone strong since the 50s, so I don't know.
And this is, like you said, this is a communication tool for us. You know, I know some municipalities may have the same people on for a very long period of time. We've got term limits, and so we will have other people on at the next CIP when that comes out. So, or future CIPs. So we need to use this as a communication tool. If we approve something, it's approved in a CIP, and so we have to agree that that's an appropriate use of funds. So.
Thank you. My next comment actually appears on page 15. I'm good to move on to that if folks are all right. Okay, so on page 15.
Before you, Lisa, you said we're approving. This is, CIP is aspirational in nature for the most part, yes?
Yes, but when we look at the budget then, when things are included, the reasoning is it was approved in the CIP. Now, it's, again, that's not saying that budget item is going to be approved, but there is a rationale there that it was approved at some point.
Well, I guess I rationalized that COG staff has gone and said, look, here are the things we think we're gonna need. And when it comes down to budget time, whether it was in the CIP or not, there's gonna be other needs and there's gonna be some things they didn't need. So I don't think that rationale should hold water come budget time. Like, because there's a $150K in the CIP for resurfacing doesn't mean we're gonna automatically approve resurfacing for 2025 in the budget, right? We're aligned there, right? I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. So then I had a lot of, and Kim was there, we had a very long facilities committee meeting on this entire thing. And so then I dialed myself back because I said, okay, this is what COG staff believes they're gonna need. And so, we'll give them the kind of space and grace to kind of throw those things out there. But come budget time, if there's not budget for them to do that, they're just not gonna be able to do it. And that's where we're gonna have to hold the line. But if you're telling me that, folks in COG are gonna say, well, it's on there, Mari, and you liked it, then I'm gonna start ripping stuff out if that's what we need to do. Or start making comments to rip things out if that's what we need to do now. So let me know, Madam Chair.
Right, yeah.
My experience is, I'd say we rip it out now so that we don't get into the situation of somebody down the road saying, oh, but it's in the CIP. And you say, yeah, but this is when we're going to be arguing it here in the budget. And people say, yeah, but we already put it in the CIP. If we eliminate it now, that discussion does not happen, and therefore the likelihood of getting something into a budget that maybe isn't unnecessary is reduced. So I'm looking at this as all those things that I would like to see come out of the CIP. And I will also say, to another point you made, that, COG staff who absolutely did their due diligence in this, but I've also heard in the facilities meeting, and I think we even heard it earlier tonight, that maybe we're just looking at the warranties. Oh, this expires on this date, the warranty, so we put it in the CIP. And then all of a sudden, something like that could get brought into the budget because you say, well, it was a warranty thing, but now we have the money for it, so we can spend it, instead of saying, hold on, we have to be pragmatic and look at these things individually and think about how this vehicle or this item would last and how it's doing in the next 3 years, not just black and white on a warranty. And I think a lot of this is, right now, the black and white on a warranty. So it is aspirational in some ideas, but again, I'm trying to identify those items to bring them front and center to potentially be eliminated.
And, or even pushed out.
Pushed
to a
out,
future
yeah.
year, so.
As, some of the things, I saw too were like recommendations from like the American Public Works Association or something, and it was like 7 years or something that you think, oh, well, we could take care of things and eke it out, but,
A thought came to my mind. If it's not broke, don't necessarily mess with it, right? And like something Kim had brought up, if you take care of the asset, even though it may only be warranted 5 years, there are things that if you take care of it properly, it could go 8, 9, or even 10 years. So,
Yeah. So again, that's just my perspective on this. Again, so at least I can say definitively, I've got some items here that I'd like to see taken out or pushed out.
I'm good. I'm just bringing up my old notes now.
Here we go.
It's gonna be a long night, folks.
I'm on page 15 of the CIP.
Where's the pencil sharpener?
So I would just say that that's an, if I, just before we get to page 13, I have an overarching comment, and I made it before, which was sharpen the pencil. If it's aspirational and you're like, hey, I think it's $55,000, and I know, I'll just say that what I was told by someone was, hey, we don't know what construction costs are gonna be in 2-3 years. They could be 20-30% higher, whatever happens with asphalt prices and fuel prices. So we're throwing a number out there. We're gonna have a little something in there. Let's just sharpen the pencil now. And that's my overarching, just sharpen the pencil now. And during budget season, we say, hey, CIP, it was 30 grand. It's 60 grand today because it's been 2 years and timber prices are up and whatever else. So I would just make that overarching comment to sharpen the pencil today across this entire thing. So this, $3 million, let's make it 2.5. I'm gonna throw it out, there's a number, and then maybe some of the 96K and some other things will help get you there, but I'm throwing that out there now. Over.
Thank you.
All right, I'll continue. The one item that, again, kind of sticks with me is the parking lot resurfacing for $150,000. Again, just out of my own interest as to compare it to other parking lots, I don't see it as being that bad, and this could probably be pushed out as well when I compare it to other parking lots within the center region.
I'd agree with that comment. I'm definitely not as familiar as others who've been on facilities, so I'd take input, but.
Well, I remember from being on facilities, and I wonder if it couldn't be reduced and maybe do spot treatments, because I know in particular there was a problem with deep ruts in front of the trash, where the, how do you call that? The bin that.
The dumpsters.
Yes, dumpsters, thank you. So there were deep ruts there that needed to be addressed, and then there was some cracking and falling off. And since code had moved all their fleet vehicles over. So I wonder if there isn't a way to, again, sharpening your pencil, just do more of a spot, a particular area. If the whole thing isn't broken, why, maybe.
Right.
Then that will help in future if you're doing it based on areas. But I agree overall with your comment.
And if I may to that point, anybody experienced that PennDOT was on Branch Road today, repaving just a little strip in the middle of the road? Like, I'm saying, PennDOT, no, we can do these things, to your point, Patty, of saying, okay, here's the part that maybe needs to be addressed, it's not the whole thing. So maybe that is something that we can do, is look at that. But again, that $150,000 for completely redoing it stuck out to me.
Well, and I'd say too, the other thing I'd been thinking about was in 2027, the electric vehicle installation. So would it make sense to do a bigger project then if something's getting done at that point? So if there was some maintenance that could be done in 2025 and 2026.
That's right, because
So it's just a thought, but I agree with your comment. Maybe that's something that could be looked at a little bit more.
I'd like that, and I'll say why, Lisa, because I think some of that with the electric infrastructure there too, there's pads and concrete work and everything else that has to be done. So maybe there's actually an offset of some of the costs too.
Sure.
So yeah, that's a great idea.
That's right.
Instead of redoing the parking lot and then ripping it up for
Exactly.
electric vehicle infrastructure.
That's
Yep.
what I was wondering about. So I guess that's a comment we would make on. So to summarize the comment for the manager, to
Postpone this?
postpone it in alignment with the electric vehicle upgrades in 2027.
I was gonna say that even at that point, anything else that might be underneath it.
Right, because I would imagine they'll have, we'll have a better idea of what amount of electric vehicles we'll have at that point. So, and now there's been changes in, even based on availability. So that just provides a little bit more time for planning for that.
And who knows what grants and other things might be available for the electric at that point.
Yeah.
That's a good point, too.
offset some things.
Exactly.
Oh, consider grants. I would say that would be a good comment for.
Let's consider
Yeah,
grants. I like
consider
that.
grants.
Consider
as if they're not considered. Consider grants for the, but for specifically for the electric vehicle installation project.
I'll just draw folks' attention to page 16 where it actually references the boiler. So I don't know, again, that's the 10 years estimated. It was installed in 2017, 2018. So that's where that reference came from.
And you could make that even as a general comment, you know, like noted that, you know, this is the typical lifespan of items. You know, maybe it's worth facilities tracking over time, you know, how long some things go beyond estimated life. So just, I guess, to kind of note, we see this, it could be a potential replacement in that year with maintenance and with general good maintenance, you know, hopefully this won't be needed. It's more of just a general comment to kind of point back to our discussion here.
Yes. Anything that we needed more on that? Okay. Okay, I'm gonna keep going unless others have anything that jumps out to them. There aren't that many, but. Okay.
We do need to acknowledge just on page 7 of the document, 18 of the PD, 17, sorry, 17 of the document, 18 of the PDF, that $1 million of the total, you know, $960,000 is the new vehicle, fire vehicle. So there's only so much cutting we can do, and so it's not going to be here, right? So it'll be a good bit. And I'm on that committee. Was it the Public Safety Committee? And this is a need.
Yes.
Period. Point blank.
And that'll be the same in 2026. There's a large vehicle purchase.
Yep.
Okay, I will continue. I appreciate, I know back to the library, some of the computers, again, just a comment that I hope, again, we are looking, and I know we are excellent at seeking grants for the computers and other things for the public use, so that was something that jumped out until I heard those explanations at other meetings and went, okay, good, we are looking for grants and other things in that space. So that's a moot point. I just want to thank the library staff for helping me understand that earlier on.
Which page was library? Did you mention that?
22 of the document.
Yeah. And there's also 27 of the CIP where the 2026 laptops, 3D printers, et cetera, for library patrons. Which of course made me think, okay, that sounds like it would be rife for a grant. Happy to continue unless others, all right?
Just a note, I think library has a significant carry forward. And so some of these things are not necessary for 25, or at least the current carry forward can be leveraged for some of those grants without additional municipality. Then this is probably an excellent place to get some significant clawback for that kind of goal I set of getting down to 2.5 perhaps. Just a thought. So that is not to say I want to cut library funding.
Oh, yeah.
Let's be clear here.
Right.
The library is looking good on funds.
Yes, we support our libraries.
Feel like I need to qualify.
No.
Sorry, Matt.
Also, we gotta replace some book drops because we are like one of the largest contributors to using the book drops. We've worn them out.
Some springs.
All right, looking at the code administration, one of the items that, so page 31 of the CIP that jumped out was again, the conference room technologies. Looks like we're gonna be spending 10,000 in 2026 and another 10,000 in 2027 on those technologies. I would hope that those could be reduced or eliminated if the technologies are working as advertised in that space. In those spaces, I should say.
Interesting about code, there's $0 coming from municipal. However, because code occupies half the building, are some of those code dollars sprinkled across all some of the other building uses? That's a question or a thought to consider.
Yeah, and if I may, in general, even above that, so not only on page 31, but on page 30, the conference room technology, now in this case for the regional refuse capital, for their plan too, they're looking to invest $10,000 in their conference room technology in 2025. And I just know from organizations I've worked in, maybe you have one nice conference room. Do you need 4 or 5 of them? I don't know. Probably, I would say, probably not. I mean, I can't imagine they're all in use all the time. So maybe it's about being strategic on which conference room gets one really nice upgrade and which other ones kind of say, okay, these are more general purpose use, et cetera. So that's an overarching comment on conference rooms.
I'd agree with that comment. Yes, Kimberly, yeah.
An interesting side note on that is I want to make sure I do my research on whether or not that even belongs in the CIP, because a lot of computer technology, a lot of software applications, they are not necessarily considered to be capital investments like they used to be, because a lot of subscriptions are cloud-based now. They're annual renewals. So I'd like to take a closer look at that and make sure that upgrading a smart board or a television in a conference room really qualifies as a capital asset. So because it's
Interesting.
evident for both code and for the planning room and also the AV equipment that is in the general forum, now we sort of see a theme, like, are we putting these assets in the right place? So I just wanted to note that I'm kind of aware, I think I would like to be much more clear, not only from a capital perspective, but then also how does that translate into the accounting world with when do we write it off, when do we depreciate it, but we know it's good for 8 years or 9 years. So, thank you.
That sounds wonderful. Yeah.
And I just want to share with the board that we are also doing that same assessment. And you may recall there were times where we said, you know, as we look at our capital improvement plan with our new finance director, we're looking to determine, you know, have the traditional items that we've put in the CIP in the past really, you know, appropriate to have in a capital improvement plan in the future. And so very similar to what Kimberly has shared is also the same evaluation and assessment that we're doing as we develop our capital improvement plan. So I just want to echo those comments.
Okay, wonderful. Yeah, so those are my comments on the conference room technologies, again, because it does have it a couple times throughout the document. Not so worried about the Ford Escapes anymore. Sorry, I'm talking to myself.
Speaking of technologies, I found it, but I really would encourage and support creativity and innovation, because I recall last year they were talking about spending $15,000 to replace a projector, and like $15,000, a lot of conference rooms that I do know anymore are using television monitors that are now very incredibly large for some of the spaces, especially at COG, but it was kind of turned down. But
Yeah.
but again, couple $1,000s for a few TVs versus $15,000 just for one projector.
And it's all about.
And now we got, well, speaking of this,
Yeah.
we're getting there.
Absolutely. Yeah, so looking at the different technologies, what's available,
Right.
and maybe rethinking the approach.
Yeah.
Projector versus television, et cetera. Again, common themes.
I think that's a good comment to include in there, look at, not just replacement every time, but what new, maybe more efficient or, less expensive technologies available instead of automatic replacements for things, so that's a great comment.
Kind of get out of that mindset like, oh, it's always been this. Thankfully, nobody's still using an overhead transparency projector.
I still see some of those floating around a large higher education institution right by us.
It's at Lion Surplus.
Some of them are. All right, so the other thing that jumped out at me, now this is more about me learning kind of how finance and code and other agencies operate. On page 32, called out as the fire safety trailer for $290,000. So when I see fire safety trailer, of course, absolutely in support for myself of fire safety and the trailers, but I see it under the code agency capital. So that's just my learning curve to say, wait a minute, it sounds like it's fire. Shouldn't that be somewhere else in a CIP? I don't know. I guess I just have to appreciate that something like a fire safety trailer is not fire apparatus, but code.
I think maybe Eric wants to comment on that. Eric, go ahead.
Sure. So Center Region Code Administration and the team there does a lot of public education about fire safety and how fire extinguishers work, how smoke detectors work, how smoke can move through a building, and they simulate a lot of that for the education of kids as well as adults and operators of child care institutions, teachers, a lot of those sorts of groups throughout the year. And fire safety trailers referenced here, some are, after years of being used to demonstrate smoke and other sorts of hazards, are needing to look for replacement. And I know I've seen Patty at the Lion Dash where these trailers are on display and functioning for public education. So that's where a lot of the public education happens, is through Center Region Code, not fire.
And then, if I may, and I appreciate that because this is the first time, hearing fire safety trailer, I didn't realize that's the one that I know my kids even appreciated, learning what you do with an oven fire, and it is fantastic.
Yeah.
It really is incredible piece of equipment for education and safety. I love it. Again, maybe that could have been spelled out as to what that was, because I think my initial impression was it's an apparatus that's pulled to a fire for response. So fire safety trailer to me could have held like specialized fire equipment. I didn't realize that this is actually the device that
Codes
does the
education
education,
tool.
codes
Yeah,
education.
so I think enhance that description would be a good comment.
This seems like this could be a nice grant opportunity as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, good.
That's awesome. So, thank you. And Mr. Norberg, thank you for the
Thank you,
explanation.
Eric.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's see here. Okay, the next one falls into the Parks Capital Improvement. This is on page 33 on the table there. And really, it's more of the general theme about the 10 trucks being purchased over 5 years. I think what we're seeing here again, and by the way, when I say trucks, specifically trucks like GMC Sierras, Ford F-250s, Ford F-150, short cabs, or a Ford F-150 pickup, things like that. Not the specialized trucks, but the general trucks where we have 10 of them being purchased over 5 years. I think that's because, warranties expire, et cetera, and that these are hopefully not going to happen, but I really would like to see some of these drop off in especially the more recent years, or be pushed out sooner rather than later. Because that's $500,000, over $500,000 in 5 years on just pickup trucks.
I would probably even somehow correlate that with the maintenance program and safety, because I was actually, I think it might have been maybe not finance. I overheard one meeting where a code was having an issue with their vehicles actually not even passing the state inspection. So then you kind of get into, well, the vehicle's not useful, but if you have staff driving it, it's not safe. And so just striking that perfect balance of getting it out there, but not to, you know, where it's falling apart as it's going down the road.
So,
Yeah, I don't think
Madam
you're,
Chair,
yeah, and I think you're, yeah,
Yeah, so.
your suggestion wouldn't be that.
Jeremy, to your point, I believe the vehicles, after a while, if they are no longer, we'll say salvageable or drivable, then they then get donated to the
Yep.
fire department for use. And I did ask, you know, for their simulations over at Pleasant
Oh.
Gap. So I did ask if we could all be invited to a barbecue sometime in the
Nice.
future.
Okay. Yeah, I heard that too. Actually, they were donated to like the mechanic.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, they were
School
donated
first.
At
to
the
the school
school
for the
first, and
mechanic
then to the
program,
fire,
and
yeah.
then they were donated to, I believe it was not
Yeah.
Yeah.
not necessarily the fire. Well, I guess
The
there's a lot of
training
the
center,
yeah,
yeah.
fire training.
They set them on fire. That sounds like fun.
So I
set,
think-
set them on fire, and you know, yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's I mean, I would agree with that comment to relook at some of the replacement, and you're talking about just,
But yeah.
and specifically to call it not the specialized maintenance equipment, but the vehicles, the pickup
Spec-
truck.
Yes, thank you. Specifically the ones that start with truck dash.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the ones that are non-specialized,
Yeah.
general
Mm-hmm.
purpose type vehicles.
Yep,
Is
okay.
that what it's gonna be replaced with? I guess it's also trying to evaluate, does the new vehicle necessarily need to be a GMC Sierra, or does it necessarily need to be a 3/4 ton truck versus a 1/2 ton truck? And
Yeah, if I'm looking out to 2029 and I say I want to buy a Ford F-150 pickup, well, maybe Chevy makes a good one.
they can make it, yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to give a dollar amount or cut by a certain number of vehicles, or?
I think I would not,
Or just general comment
I think-
to space these out farther?
I think a general comment to space these out farther, and again, to be pragmatic, not just looking at the warranties, but, you know, what we actually think these vehicles are going to do in a year or so. I think any of us can look at our vehicle and say, yeah, is it gonna last another year, pass an inspection or two? Yes or no? To, again, maybe put that level of scrutiny on this, so the CIP gets closer to the actual budget also.
So we're saying, you know, space it out by maybe reducing the amount expected to be spent per year by, you know, 30% or 25% or something, however,
Another option,
makes
we have
sense.
5 years laid out here, one truck per year. Find the one that's, you know, close to falling off, not falling off the cliff, but you know what I mean, being
Yeah.
undrivable or unsafe, and make that the priority.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were to do that, we'd take that $500,000 expenditure over the 5 years and reduce that, of course, to approximately $250,000.
is that a clear enough?
Yes,
Comment, okay.
I have both of the options currently listed. So one option is to reduce by 250,000 to do one truck per year, but also reduce the amount expected to be spent by 30%. So I would maybe kind of look to the board to say, do you want to leave both of those options in, or did you want to have consensus on one?
And you could say just suggestions, or just, you know,
Suggestions for consideration.
spacing out, I think was your,
Spacing out was, or reducing to 1 year's, I would say, the
Right,
one that's
right,
coming
right.
to mind, you know, first and foremost. But I would actually up it from 30% to making a cut of 50% if we had two options on the table.
and that would be about one vehicle per year,
Exactly.
so, yeah. Okay.
All right, and, well, Millbrook Marsh. And I know there's some conversation too with the service building and everything there. So I'd really like some input and thoughts on what other folks are seeing or what they're hearing or what we're considering, because I know in some of the conversations also, with the $6.1 million, where else is money going to be coming from? Are we going to do those fundraising events, et cetera? What do we anticipate those being? And if we anticipate them being significant, can we reduce that 6.1 to something that is a little more manageable or palatable?
Yeah.
So maybe that could be a discussion point for us tonight.
Mhm.
I think the question is, this is clearly aspirational. I mean, I guess there's a need, but this, this date, clearly aspirational in so far as kind of the amount and all that good stuff. Is this something that the COG needs to just take it off the table now? This is just something that the Parks Authority or whoever needs to just deal with and understand kind of the sources and uses for this singular project, and then just do the singular project and ask for some other funding from various sources, vice it being in here. I guess now that we're talking about, let's just get the stuff out that's not,
That's an interesting
not necessary. I
option.
think we just remove it. That would be my recommendation. Just thinking through that.
And I have some thoughts on that. For me, I prefer it sits there as a reminder that this thing is out there until we get something that is more planful and, directed where we can see that thing spread out. But for me, if I see it there, I go, oh, that's right, we still have to solve that issue.
And that's where I think this is my problem with it, is that it becomes, well, it's in the CIP, the
Right.
communication tool, and is it aspirational or is it already a done deal? And I'd rather go either the Omari route, take it out completely, or just give them a number. This is what Ferguson is willing to give towards this. You make it work. I mean, so one of the General Forum members basically always says, why do we torture ourselves over this? Why don't we just give them a number, and that's their job to figure it out of how to make it work. So
Yeah, and I think I'm not comfortable having it in here at that amount with under a loan and long-term debt. So because I think the idea has been to have a fundraising committee organized by the Park Authority to raise the funds for that. So I think, I like the idea of a flat amount, saying, we'll agree to that, or, removing it and saying this, because it's not a regional park either. The regional park system was set up to have one in each participating municipality, and that's including the pools. So we have the 2 pools and the 3 parks. So each participating municipality has one regional facility. So this is external to that. And I know just from speaking with supervisors who were on previous boards, the concept when taking over management of Millbrook Marsh was to not be outlaying funds for it, that it would sustain itself. And so I think that's an important thing to remember when we look at some of these expenses too, because from the one chart, it looked like it was above the library. So so I think all these things are important to keep in mind. So,
my other concern about this too, and I realize I'm crossing a line into something we shouldn't, but I really have a problem with an asset of that amount in a floodplain. I mean, particularly when we have building up on the hill, those new Aspen condos and a 10-story Mount Nittany Tower going in.
well, and we don't own the land.
And we don't own the land, right?
So we only lease the property, and it's entirely situated in College Township, I guess, but we don't own the land. So a lot of things to consider. But I think we have a couple of good options here. So if there was comment online from
Christie.
from Parks Director, from Christy Owens, let's go ahead and take that, and then we can go back and discuss some of the options we just brought up here. Christy, if you're there, if you wanted to comment, we'd welcome that.
Hi there, can you hear me okay?
We can,
Yep.
thank you.
Great, thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to just speak and share share a little bit of the context behind the project and kind of where we're at right now. We're in such a preliminary stage of getting ready to start this project, well aware, of course, of the relationship with Penn State and some of the diversification of funding strategies that we're approaching are having conversations with Penn State to see what type of support they can provide to CRPR to do a project of this size for a property that is leased through them. So that's our hope, is that we'll be able to have those conversations preliminarily. But there's a sense of urgency to a point in the fact that we recently, actually as of last week, just shut down another section of the boardwalk. And I will say the history of the marsh and the boardwalk and the way it was constructed was in phases. So back in the early times, it was around 2003. I believe it was a 2 or 3 year project to build it. So there's parts of the boardwalk that are failing, we believe, based on those phases. And there are other sections that are shortly behind that are probably about a year or 2 out where it's going to continue to fail. So the sense of urgency is real that we're feeling. And the challenge that we have is applying for grant funding requires a match. And so if we don't have secured funding as a match for this facility, which we consider to be a regional facility, it's really challenging for us to generate the revenue to make it possible, considering we only have 3 full-time staff and seasonal staff running programs year-round. So we are trying really hard, and it is very difficult with adding in the new, education building and everything. So there's a lot of realities that we're facing, but trying to approach this strategically to figure out the best way, the best approach where whatever number you're comfortable with as a municipality, we'll work with, on our end. But I just wanted to share the context to how challenging it can be for our agency to be able to raise that amount of money. And again, we're trying to look at more permanent structures, not something that's only gonna last 20, 30 years. We are looking at some different materials and considering potentially phasing, maybe doing smaller sections, maybe cutting off certain sections and doing them down the road. So we are trying to be very mindful of your tax dollars. And I recognize it's very difficult to even wrap your head around a $6 million price tag. So I really greatly appreciate these comments and appreciate your opportunity to let me speak on it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
So, I've got a question for you, Christy. When you say challenging without matching funds, what matching funds exist today?
So right now, I don't have the exact dollar amount, but they're below $20,000, roughly, raised specifically for the boardwalk, because we just completed a $3 million project. So we are now, we've got a little bit of a grace period between going back to donors who we've built relationships with, potentially new donors. So that's kind of where we're at. Most DCNR grants require, as you know, a 50-50 match. So if you don't have a 50-50 match, some of the larger federal funds require a larger match, like a $1 million match, which is why we want to kick off a capital campaign to help raise that money.
Copy. And if no changes to the CIP, how many dollars matching would be available?
We currently don't have any dollars matching other than what I just mentioned, which was a little below $20,000, unless we have support of the funds for each year, each fiscal year.
Okay, all right. So, all right, that's good, because I was just trying to make sure that if, with this recommendation of removing it from the CIP, it really doesn't impact any matching opportunities. There's still the opportunity to go and seek sources, to go to the township, hey, we need $100,000, to go to all the other municipalities and say, hey, everybody chip in, please, we're trying to go get a match. You can still go do that with or without this entry in the CIP, correct?
Yeah, I mean, we could put in for example, if we took it out, we could put in like, I'll just throw a number out, $250,000 of a grant match to go after an additional $350,000 from DCNR, for example. We could put that in 2025, but realistically, we always try to forecast forward so that you have some kind of expectation of the budgetary impact when the project comes to be done.
And has
Understood.
Clearwater Conservancy, and you said you're in preliminary talks with Penn State, so them and Clearwater Conservancy also have an interest in this. Has Clearwater committed anything?
Clearwater has not committed anything. They've been a great partner to us and have provided a lot of administrative support and information on the back end of maybe ways that we can kind of tackle this, but there's been no talks of financial support from Clearwater. They're kind of in a similar situation as we are as a nonprofit.
Good, thank you. Thanks, Chrissy.
I'm just curious, again, Christy, thinking about this and Penn State's contribution or working with them, the sense of urgency, this has been communicated to those at the university as well. It's being communicated clearly here, so I'm wondering as to how you're receiving it at the university.
So we have a representative from Penn State that sits on our Millbrook Marsh Advisory Council Committee, and that person is Tamaya. She is very in the loop on the project, and we keep her apprised of everything, so she's able to communicate that back to Penn State. But Eric can probably speak to this too. We've had discussions about speaking maybe with some other representatives as well, having more of a group discussion.
I think that group discussion for me is an important one with all the different stakeholders to better understand this so that we're not piecemealing the conversation or trying to connect dots or components that may or may not exist, but we're all hearing the same concerns, et cetera, together. Maybe that's a recommendation that I would have for this as well, is that we take this out, Omar, to your point, we take it out until we get together as, through some stakeholder discussions to better understand everything and really brainstorm next steps while we're all around the table.
I'd agree with that.
I agree.
And then I think following up, I'm supportive of that idea of saying we'll pledge a certain amount to help match donations. I think that would make sense. And that would follow what we did with the education buildings. We helped support that by matching those donations, or contributing to a partial match, not dollar for dollar, but. Okay, I think those are good comments. So do you want to kind of summarize where we're at here?
In summary, I would say we remove it, and that we would advocate for having a stakeholder meeting with all the different representatives in one location at one time. And again, to avoid any piecemeal or miscommunications between the different stakeholders or with anybody in the future.
Okay, I think that. Okay.
Well.
And then I did have a question about the service building, because that had been kind of bumped up as a really immediate need from 23 to 24. And now I just saw that it has moved back to 2029. So I guess I wanted to note that, and ask if there had been changes in the use of that building and why that was pushed back out.
So some of the reasoning behind that was escalating the boardwalk project because we felt that there was more urgency to that project with it kind of coming apart at the seams, I guess. And we're continuing to do some minor repairs to that building, so we are trying to push that out as far as we can. And we're also evaluating the expansion and the buildings that we've added to the marsh to see if there's any opportunity to move at least one or two of our staff over into that facility. But again, I don't want to say that for sure. We've got a lot to figure out operationally to see if that's even an option. But we're looking at kind of a phased approach with that so that we can do a better evaluation of the facility without staff in it. There are some things that we do need to look at within that facility. It is a old chicken coop, so there is a stone foundation underneath it. It's not in the best shape. It's not a good working environment per se for our staff, and so we recognize that, but we're trying to pick and choose, you know, the things that, you know, are critical.
Thanks very much. Yeah, it had been described as pretty urgent last year, so I guess I was just concerned. But if staff's being moved to the new buildings, that does explain that. So that's all I had.
That's actually all I had
Okay. On the marsh.
on the marsh, and actually for the rest of the document.
Okay. I didn't have anything on pools. Did I skip anything?
Why not?
Pools are pretty, operationally, they pay for themselves, so that's pretty good, and I didn't have any maintenance questions. Did you have pools items?
They don't pay for any of the capital though.
Right, yeah.
So that's just my recommendation on, general recommendation, but certainly for pools that those fees need to start paying for, should start paying, in my opinion, for some of the capital improvements. Everybody uses it, but not everybody chips in on the resurfacing of the pool deck or all these other things that need to get done, so.
I think it's a good comment. Pools, and then regional parks, I wanted to ask, with the Whitehall Road Regional Park all-season building, that was $500,000 for 2025. And I wanted to ask Christy or Kimberly if there were donations were a part of that 500, if there's already some funding in that.
Yes, I can speak to that. There is a private donation and a grant that's wrapped up into that. There's $75,000 in a grant, and there's a committed donation pledge from a private donor of about $195,000. So that funding has been kind of restricted and earmarked for that project. I will say, I use Amari's term, sharpening the pencil on those actual costs a bit to really get more of a realistic dollar amount on what that would be. We're looking at an option for an indoor pavilion versus just a standard pavilion with a concession. So we are trying to look at the costs on that and weighing that back and forth.
Thanks. I think someone had commented to me about maybe a 3-season, because if the fields aren't in use all year round, would we want the 4-season pavilion or, an indoor facility there? So I would suggest that as a comment as we're trying to get something built there, but, constricted here on the funds. And that would likely reduce that amount.
Yes. I had some thoughts on the Oak Hall Playground and Pavilion specifically, but that's.
So that would be my comment on Whitehall Road. And then we'll go, so I did have the same question about the Hess Field restrooms and parking is $600,000 for 2025. Are there some donations or grants contributing to that amount?
No, not at this time. That is also going to be based on the requirements that we have to meet for number one, sewer availability and the type of facility that we build, because of the restrictions of only being able to construct a pavilion that is like a wet vault system, because we can't tap into sewer, and we were trying to avoid doing any kind of a sand mound option, etc. So once we have a better idea of what the codes are going to require for, like, for example, how many women's restrooms, men's restrooms, family style, I think we'll be able to put a better number there. But we used an estimate based on a quote that we received from a vendor that provides a 5 restroom facility. But again, I don't think that that's too realistic until we have a better idea of how many bathrooms are gonna be needed for that space. And we've done a lot of comparisons with Oak Hall, Whitehall, and we've even drilled down into the daily attendance and whatnot to get those numbers a little bit more refined.
Okay.
I have a comment related to Oak Hall Playground and Pavilion. I was wondering, that's coming up in 2029 for $750,000. If we could potentially break those two out, separate playground and pavilion. From my perspective, I know with multiple regional parks within about 10 minutes of each other, I'd be curious to understand a little bit more about the playground facility that was going to be built there and how it was going to either be unique or similar to some of the other regional park playgrounds that we have. And so I'd again make the comment that if we could separate those out, maybe we can have a deeper conversation as 2029 comes, gets closer. But again, leaving those numbers in there, but breaking them out or apart.
I think that's a good comment to phase that out. My other comment is going to be on the feasibility study, and that's under 2028. And this is a feasibility study for this says relocate leased properties. So is this just for maintenance, active adult center, and admin? I guess this.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so this is not an indoor facility, an indoor recreational facility.
Correct. I know
Okay.
with the facilities master plan that they're working on, they're gonna help to identify some of that stuff, so I'm not sure what the outcome's gonna be from those conversations or whatnot, but, the original look at this was to figure out a plan for those leased properties to see if there were opportunities at potentially Oak Hall to relocate offices, to that space. With the intent potentially in the future to add to that, maybe some indoor rec space, but again, that's something I can't really put on the table without a lot more investigation and without that facilities master's plan.
Okay, so it likely would, the feasibility study would look at including indoor rec in that. So my comment is, if we do the feasibility study, we need to build in funds for the construction the following year, because the feasibility study will be a plan for how you do it. It's not saying, are you going to or not? We've seen from other feasibility studies, it'll be, this is how to move forward with this. So my suggestion is to put in beginning engineering, design, land costs in the following year if we're going to have the feasibility study in.
That's a good perspective on it.
So
Get
that
the
would be
whole
my
picture.
comment. Right, so that would be it. So for 2029 to have, whatever is a reasonable number for those items. So for engineering, design, and preliminary construction, land acquisition, because we won't do a feasibility study and just have it sit. If we do the feasibility study, something is going to happen because the argument will be, well, you can't just let it sit. It'll expire. It won't be good after a few years. So we've got to be looking at what's next. So that's my comment. Insert front. Yes, thank you. Okay. And you had the Oak Hall Playground comment. Are we about at the end?
Pretty much.
Okay. I guess one general comment I'll say is similar to how I had brought up the service building at Millbrook Marsh. It would be helpful, I think, to just see where plans left off at the end of a previous CIP, what was achieved, what substantial things have changed in the new CIP. So if we said, say a service building is absolutely necessary for 2024, but then we're moving that out, I think having some connection back to the approved CIP that everybody agreed to and spent a lot of time on, and say these are the changes we've made in those decisions and planning, I think would be helpful. So some continuity between the capital improvement plans. And it just outlining the differences, where the changes are. I'll hand it back to you.
I like that. That was all I had, so, good.
Anything else? So did we finish out that comment guide?
Well, I just want to go back to something that, Kimberly, you had said, you had used a 3% increase each year. I would like to see that be flat. I would like to not increase. I just feel like it's spiraling, and I'd rather see pencils sharpened first. I think that's going to be the phrase.
I think that's a good point, because this isn't our operational budget where we have the cap on status quo increases. So I would agree with that comment, to aspire to keep this flat.
I think that was just something that was lifted off the previous CIPs. And I did notice that it wasn't always consistent. Some years it was 0.0, it was 2.6, and then it was 2.8, and then it was 3.0, then it went back to 2.6. And I'm not sure what the logic was behind that. So as far as I'm concerned, I'd like to get it right. So it doesn't, I'm not really married at all to that methodology if we can find a better way. But I just wanted you to understand that's kind of like where it came from, and I wasn't even sure that logically you see the little increases, but one argument could be made that everything is getting more expensive and everybody's paying more money for everything, but then just how do you mitigate it? How do you just make sure that you're controlling what you can before you just layer on just a random, it's not really a random number, but is it logical to use the same number on a year-to-year basis? That might be where I could start with that.
That's great, thank you. Okay. Anything else? Kimberly's up there.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming, and to Christy and to Eric also. That was so helpful, and to Lisa, who also sat through our meeting. It was so nice and helpful. So thank you all. And then I'll ask Matt if you think you've got everything you need in comments, and
Just want to thank the manager for taking notes, because I think it's all captured. So I think we're good.
okay.
Thank
And
you.
would you like us to make a motion here? There's a motion about these comments. If anyone would care to make it.
I'm so lost in my own paper.
I, Mr. Thompson, will move that the Board of Supervisors direct the Township Manager to forward the Board's comments for the 2025 CRCOG Program Plan and the 2025-2029 Capital Improvement Plan and Replacement Plan to the CRCOG Executive Director by noon on May 16.
This is Patty, I'll second.
Thanks. Other discussion?
Is the 16th the right date?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was moved from
It
that
was.
original date, yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's it. I assume that's
By,
where it's at now. I know
by
it
the
was moved.
latest date that, amend the motion by the
Yeah.
date that
Yes.
it is due.
Perfect.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Thanks, everyone, for all that input, and everyone who paid attention to all of that, so it was very good. Okay, if there's no other discussion, all those in favor, please say
We
aye.
don't have a second, or do we have?
Oh, I thought,
Is Omar second?
I thought I heard a second.
Did Patty, you second?
I thought you seconded.
I did, you made it and I seconded
Yeah.
it, right.
Oh, okay, sorry, not
Okay,
meaning to
Jeremy
ignore you, I
made the
totally.
motion.
Here's the motion, second.
Patty seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no.
I was totally
All right, well,
correcting
thank you
myself, so I
again,
was
everyone.
accurate.
Much appreciated.
I just didn't hear you.
Okay, and I am gonna pull my next item up here. It looks like we are at consideration of a financial contribution toward the Community Diversity Conference, embracing and implementing inclusion. And we'll go to the manager.
Thank you. Provided with the agenda is a much more longer version of the narrative, but the Community Diversity Group has submitted a request for the board's consideration to contribute a sponsorship for the Community Diversity Group Conference, or excuse me, the Community Diversity Conference that's held every 2 years. The Community Diversity Group leads the effort to attract and retain diverse group of individuals to share in fostering a community based on inclusion and equity. They are a nonprofit coalition that has served the Center region for over 10 years. The Community Diversity Group puts on this conference as well as offers trainings, women empowerment seminars, and updated calendar of diversity events. Cultural Conversations, Multicultural Unity Fair, as well as the International Holiday Potluck, the Center Region's Women's Leadership Coalition, the Cultural Empowerment for Women Luncheon Series, and the Community Diversity Conference are a few examples of training and resources that are organized by this group. Provided with the agenda is a copy of the letter of request for the board's consideration. Also in the narrative is a breakdown of options for the sponsorship. In 2022, the Board of Supervisors approved a contribution in the amount of $1,000. And provided with the agenda is a recommended motion.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I'm recusing myself from this discussion and vote because I am a member of this group.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
All right. We can either take the motion, or if there's discussion.
This is Matt. I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors authorize the Township Manager to approve the sponsorship request in the amount of $1,000 as a financial contribution to support the 2024 Community Diversity Conference.
We have a second.
Mr. Thompson will second that.
Okay, discussion on this item.
I think I need to recruit myself as well. Not this organization, but some of the others on there I am involved with.
I don't think I'm involved with the other.
Right, I mean, but yeah, so if, I think,
Yeah, I guess it's hard not to be involved with
it's
something in
hard
this
to
town.
not be involved if you're not,
So I'm not
you know,
directly involved, and maybe they're just
directly
mentioning.
or benefiting, you know, from something, but I'll let the manager better explain.
Yes, and so Patty, or Miss Supervisor Stevens shared that she's a member of the Community Diversity Group and not necessarily part of the executive committee. Therefore, even her, she's not part of the decision-making as it relates to money. So she's, out of an abundance of caution, recused herself. So I would look to Supervisor Patterson and just acknowledge, if you've attended these types of events, such as the training or the conference in the past, I don't know that that necessarily creates a conflict of interest for you if you've just been an attendee. But if you serve on or support in the organization of these training events through the Community Diversity Group, perhaps out of an abundance of caution, you may also recuse yourself. But if you've attended as a member, or excuse me, if you've just attended as a participant, that wouldn't create a conflict of interest.
Okay, I think I'm okay.
Thanks. It's a good point to raise. I think a lot of things that come through like this, we've all participated. You know, I've been to these conferences and educational forums and different things. And so, you know, but when there's something where I'm maybe on a board or something, I will step away, you know. So appreciate the caution there. Okay, so we have a motion from Mr. Heller. Did we get a second from Mr. Thompson? We had some discussion. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. And we had one abstain. Okay. All right, thank you. And we will move to a donation request for Wreaths Across America. And back to the manager.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And so provided with the agenda is a copy of a donation request and letter received from the Pine Grove Mill Cemeteries, Wreaths Across America. And the letter attached also provides a breakdown of how the funds will be used and how it contributes and positively impacts the targeted community area. A link to further research and understand the mission and what the good work that they're doing is provided with the agenda, as well as a recommended motion for the board's consideration.
Thank you very much. And I see we have a recommended motion in here because we have some guests here. Would you care to make any comments since you've sat through a lot of our budget discussion? I'd invite you to come up to the podium. Just provide us your name and your township of residence, please.
So my name is Kayla Coral. I'm in Ferguson Township, and my husband and I are the organization's coordinators for our location here at Pine Grove. This is our first year putting it on. It's important to us because my husband's grandfather was a veteran in the United States Air Force, and he is buried in the Penn State Cemetery, Pine Grove Cemetery, along with 111 of his peers. So when we got the opportunity to do it, it was just something that I felt that we needed to do, and I really support their mission, especially now we're getting further removed from families understanding what it feels like to have a military member in their family. So I just brought it to you guys, hoping that if nothing else, you guys get some perspective on what it is about. You guys can come and visit, or if even just being there would be super helpful. So I just want to thank you guys for even considering it. It's a super awesome opportunity. So thank you.
Thank you so much, and thanks for sharing that. We appreciate you attending tonight as well. So if there's no discussion, I'll look for a motion.
No, and
Or if there's
as a
discussion.
veteran, I will not recuse myself from this, but instead lean into it and first say thank you for bringing this. And I will make a motion that the Board of Supervisors move to authorize the Township Manager to approve the donation in the amount of $1,000 as a financial contribution to support the 2024 Pine Grove Mills Cemetery wreaths across America.
Ms. Omari, I'll second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Again, thank you. All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no. All right, thanks very much. Okay, we will move to communications to the board.
Do you want me to start off?
Whoever wants to start off. Yes.
I will start off. So I have received 2 communications to the board. One was an email regarding township's staff and turnover. And I had another one about the no-knock initiative or something that's being done in Patton Township. And they were sort of interested in, is that something we'd be interested in doing here in Ferguson, exempting like the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts, so they could still get their cookies and their mulch.
Interesting, okay, all right. Jeremy, anything?
I just received a communication regarding personnel.
Okay.
Communication regarding personnel and comments regarding, again, parking on East Pine Grove Road, restricting some lines of sight, pulling when folks are trying to egress and ingress to their driveway.
Okay, Amari, anything?
Similar to the above.
Thanks. I too received the email on personnel matters that I think is the same email we all got. And of course, we can't discuss personnel matters in a public setting, but to respond, I'd say that the board is consulted by the manager as decisions are made and steps are taken in different personnel decisions. And we've generally, I think all, as this present board and past, have been fully confident in the manager's decision-making and exceptional leadership, and I have no concerns about that. So, yes, that's what I would say at this point. All right. Well, thanks, everyone. If there is nothing else, I will take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And I'll second, and we are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.